Welcome to Chapter 9 of Engage and Grow. Here's where we actually hit grow. Now, together as a team, we've explored the evaluation, the buy-in, we've made sure that's a reality. Unify, align, and of course, engage, where we turn into high performers. Now, going from turning into a high performer to staying a high performer is an entirely different question. You're a genius on this stuff, so are you. The stuff you do, Rich, is brilliant. Now, Marshall, I want to come to you first, because you've coached a lot of leaders, and some of them grow and some of them don't. Give us your perspective on that.
Hey, sometimes, my name is Marshall Goldsmith, I fail sometimes. I don't get paid if they don't get better, and a few times I didn't get paid. So I'm often asked that difference. What is the difference between those ones that do grow, the ones that do get better and don't? I've narrowed it down to 3 factors. The first one is courage. You see, everything we've talked about today, I'm a total believer in everything that you've talked about, that we've all talked about, takes courage. That takes courage to look in the mirror. It takes a whole lot of courage. It's painful to look in the mirror. It takes courage. The second thing takes humility. You see, although I'm a wonderful coach, I really can't help someone improve. It's already perfect. Somebody's already perfect, well, they don't need to improve, right? Yeah. Well, if you're going to grow, you can't be perfect. You have to say, I can get better, and you need the humility, and everyone I coach has to stand up and apologize for their mistakes. They have to admit they can do things better. And then the third one, and Brad, you've talked about this over and over, is discipline. It's that day to day discipline to do the follow-up, to do the work. You don't get better because you go to a class or read a book. Arnold Schwarzenegger said nobody got muscles by watching me lift the weights, right? Well, when my book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, was the #1 best-selling business book in America, #1 diet book, sold 10 times as many copies. Americans get fatter and fatter and fatter while purchasing more and more diet books. You don't lose weight by purchasing diet books. You got to go on a diet.
That's exactly right.
I did make one mistake with the book. Too late now. The title. I love it. What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I should have called it What Got You Here Won't You There Diet. Then I would have really sold a lot of copies.
Marshall, talking discipline, and this is something that I learned this from Marshall. Literally every single day, you have someone call you at the end of the day.
I do. It's called the daily question process. I have a woman call me every day, and she goes through a series of questions that represent what's most important in my life day after day after day. Now, someone asked me, why do you do this? Don't you know the theory about how to change behavior? You see, I wrote the theory about how to change behavior. Why did it? But my name is Marshall Goldsmith. I was ranked #1 executive coach in the world and #1 leadership thinker. I pay a woman to call me every day. Why? I'm too cowardly to do this by myself. I'm too undisciplined. I need help, and it's okay. And we all need help, and it's okay.
Growth doesn't happen without discipline, without pressure. If we've got an engaged team, we've got them to high performance, we need to keep them there, and I think those points are massively, massively important. So, Rich, when you look at sustaining high performance, I mean, you've got to manage high performers, you've got to recruit high performers, you've got to build new leaders. Give us some more thoughts on that one.
Okay, so in my experience, if you're recruiting in a high performer, at its core, where are they coming to? An organisation, like all we do is there's 3 types, there's 3 levels again. When someone comes to an organisation, they're a high performer or not, they are a sheep. We call them like a herd animal. They're looking to see how things are done around here. They're looking to see behaviours, who's the leaders, who's the disruptors. And so if that organisation has a critical mass of the next level called me people, okay, then they will turn into that person, whether they're a high performer, a high achiever or not. So all we're doing is turning that person into a we person. So when they come into an environment, sheep, me and we, then as a high achiever, then they're going to walk straight in. But then the tough job starts, because most of the high achievers coming through today are millennials, in my experience. And the people that hold them down are usually the older generations.
Gee, some of us older people resent that remark,
I resemble it, he resents it.
Yeah, you resemble. So then it's about unleashing, but it's all about having that person needs a coach, in my opinion. They've got to have regular coaching. There's got to be regular team meetings about behaviours.
I look at expectations on high achievers, and no one puts more expectation on a high achiever than they do themselves.
Right.
For sure.
But all these things we've discussed today are all about high achievers. Mark, you've studied this stuff more than anybody here. It's just, It's such an important aspect, keeping the high achievers achieving.
It is. I mean, when you think about it, part of what I do when I'm coaching people is I'm always taking a bet, like Marshall does, that the outcomes of the organization are going to succeed and that they're going to do better. Otherwise, the stock that I purchase or the investment I make is worthless. So it's an enlightened self-interest that I want people to continue to be successful. And when we did our research for our last New York Times bestseller, Admired, we reverse engineered how many companies actually stay on the most admired list, and how many leaders stay on the polls. And what happens is that people really quickly discover that success isn't always a good teacher. That if you're going to be growing and continuing to be a high achiever, then you need to not become complacent or satisfied. When Darwin was talking about the fittest, he was talking about those that changed the quickest. He wasn't talking about the biggest or the most profitable or the most glamorous in the animal kingdom. It was the one that was willing to continue to revise and change the plan and version it forward so that they could continue to personally grow, individually grow, and collectively grow. And so it's really important to understand that the most important part of being successful is being willing to version the plan forward, to get better every day. We can always get better, which is why I love Marshall's plan of asking yourself, have I done my best today? Because you know what? I can never get a 10 on that. I'm always aspiring to do better every day. I work with Gail Devers, who is an Olympian 4 times, stands about this tall, a hurdler. And what's shocking about people in sport and some people in business is that even when they win the gold medal last year, they want to get better.
That's right. Better is always the
They're
goal.
always talking about, if I just hit that turn better, I would have broken the world record. You won the gold medal in the Olympics. Are you satisfied? No. I'm not satisfied.
Well, let's look at relationships then in a high growth industry, in a high growth business. When a business is in grow, those relationships, managing them doesn't get easier.
Right.
It's not, gee, when we were underperformers and no one really cared, it was pretty easy to manage the relationships because no one talked about it, discussed it, looked at it, worried about it. When we're in a high performance, the pressure is on, the performance is there, we're being measured on our results, it's up on the board, we're open, we're more congruent with what we've taught, we have a vision, we have goals to go for. Managing those relationships is not an easy thing. It's something that everyone has to learn. In my experience, in managing massively high performers relating to each other, I've got to be even more involved in that, have more discussions around behavior, not less discussions around behavior. So in looking at the whole growth aspect, team, and Marshall, I want to throw to you first. Because I think that managing that growth and maintaining that growth is something that everybody needs to understand. And you've got some amazing insights around continuous growth in companies.
Well, let's start at the leader level. That leader needs to stand up and say, I have received feedback, I've evaluated myself, I am buying into it, I'm working on unifying, aligning, engaging, and now I'm working at getting better. They need to show they actually do get better.
This level of honesty from a leader, though, is really courageous.
That's what I said, courage, humility, and discipline, going back to courage.
Taking it to the entire organization.
And then you know what you say? Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. And again, the leaders I've worked with, like my friend Alan, Francis Hesselbein, hundreds of people got better. Why? Lead at the top, lead by example. You don't preach. You don't blah, blah, blah. You stand up there and you are a role model. And by the way, when you get better, who gets credit? Them. You don't take the credit. You give the credit to them. In a sense, they deserve the credit. They're the ones that gave you feedback in the first place. They've been giving you ideas, been helping you improve. Give them the credit. And the leaders that can do that, you see that growth not just at the leader level, throughout the entire organization.
Rich, when you build the Engage and Grow program, a lot of the companies you go into, you'll start with that central pod, the leadership team.
That's right.
How do they take it out to the entire organization? Because it'll ripple out, but there's got to be strategies to do that.
Well, there's one activity that's extremely powerful, which we do a lot with high achievers as well, is we call it speed rating. So it's just an Excel spreadsheet marked from 1 to 10 across the board, 1 being poor relationship, 10 being great relationship, and then actually add all the names of the people in your team, your executive and your clients. You can go outside that and do your partners and family.
Suppliers, you can look for anybody.
That's a good idea.
But then you get a global overview. 1 being poor, 3 I need to have a look at this. So it's obviously a red sort of between 1 and 4 is red, 5 and 7 is yellow, and then 8 to 10 is green. And so you can actually see it globally marked, and then you can challenge people. And
I think one of the keys on this is that a growing organization keeps growing the relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
If the relationships stop growing, then the growth starts to die. And whether it's customer relationships, supplier relationships, internal relationships, executive to team relationships.
Yes, it's like the 3 R's, as they call roles, responsibilities, and relationships. And those roles at Pixar, they do what you described, where they really want to cast the organization so that they can achieve the customer experience that they're looking for. And so do we actually have all the people in the right roles?
Right.
Marshall and I have had a chance to dabble at the Broadway producing, and the Broadway producing is around trying to get the right people in the right roles.
Right.
And this ends up being a key factor, because people can know when they don't have the right people on their team serving that outcome.
You know, well, as a venture capitalist, Mark, you invest in a lot of these companies and you get them to growth. What are some of the keys to sustaining that growth? Because you, especially in the high-tech world, you got some real growth, and those relationship management there's got to be some great things behind that.
Well, one of the best people, I think, to talk to about being able to sustain growth and spawn new ideas and organizations is Richard Branson. And I've had that privilege of working with him for about 15 years. We've created entrepreneurship centers. We've tried to find the DNA of creating a venture, but more importantly, having it succeed because the success rate is so low. And one of the hacks that he discovered actually by accident about 3 years ago. He said that, I thought I had written down everything I know about this business, and I've interviewed so many people, and then I had a tragic experience that actually taught me how to keep it fresh and rethink what I need to do. And you probably heard about it. He had his house hit by a hurricane. He lives in the Caribbean. And there was this bolt of lightning that sliced through the family home on Necker Island. And it was filled with people. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. Kate Winslet and his mom, Eve, carried everybody to safety. And he was actually sleeping down on a cabin in the beach. And he hears this bolt of lightning slicing through his house. He's panicked. He runs to try to save people. Fortunately, he sees that they're all getting out okay. It's in flames now. The place completely destroyed. It was like being attacked. And he was running and he realized, well, I'm buck naked and maybe I ought to get some clothing on. And then he ran into a cactus. And nobody feels too much sympathy for him, because he ended up being not a part of the rescue crew, that's for sure. He didn't play the hero tonight. But when he reflected on this, of course, he was delighted nobody was hurt. He felt it was tragic that everything he'd written down was in the house. He'd written notes, 30 years of writing notes. He was starting to think about whether I should reignite that. And then he had this epiphany, this very simple idea that we can all use without having to burn the house down, that we can use to renew our thinking and our commitment to each other and to what we're doing. Now, metaphorically, let's say that your house burned down. Now, feel the weight of that for a moment so that it's real for you. You don't need a big consulting agency to come help you with this innovation exercise or creativity. It burned down. Would you build it the same way again? Exactly the same way? I bet the answer is probably not. What would you change and what would you keep the same? Think about that with your career and the structure of your business. Burn it down for a moment, knowing that you don't have to throw it away. Who would you recruit back? That's a brutal question. Who would you treat better because they were scared off by this horrible disaster? Who is it that you might not want to invite back? What kind of processes? What would be the ingredients in this whole process? And I find this ends up being a great exercise to rethink about how to continue to grow. Because what happens is we get complacent, we get fixed on our ways. Success doesn't allow us to continue to say, hey, look, I worked really hard, took a lot of risks in the early days because I had to. Nobody was listening, nobody cared. I didn't have a successful career, I didn't have a successful company yet. So burn it down. And have the humility to invite people back into that project.
Growth is not something that happens by magic. It happens by a plan, by all these things. Sustained growth is by sometimes burning down the old ideas, is sometimes by challenging yourself with questions that you need to ask and being disciplined to do that. So we start, obviously, gang, with this whole process of evaluate, buy in, unify, align, engage, and then hit growth and sustain growth. We know that by doing this process, you'll get the same results we all did, and all of the companies we coach do. And I sit down and I start looking and I think, you know, grow is one thing, but ultimately to engage and grow together is the big challenge. We'll be back with a few more ideas for you in the next chapter.